On a rainy night, a poor single father finds a scared young woman on the street and decides to let her stay at his home for the night. He has no idea that she is actually the daughter of a millionaire who ran away from a life of luxury and control. Little by little, she grows close to his daughter and discovers the value of a simple life filled with love. But when her father finds her, everything changes. Still, fate has unexpected plans, and so does love. The rain fell in relentless slanting sheets, turning the already grimy streets of the city's forgotten borough into a slick black mirror reflecting the bleary neon signs. It was a night fit for melodrama and misery, and for Leo Vance, it was just another Tuesday. He clutched the thin bag of groceries to his chest, the sorry collection of discounted bread, a can of soup, and a single precious carton of milk, feeling heavier with every step. The leaky awning of his apartment building offered little solace, but it was home. As he fumbled for his keys, a sudden movement in the deep shadows of the recessed doorway made him freeze. A figure, huddled and small, was pressed against the cold brick, trying to disappear into the very structure of the building. His first instinct, honed by years of surviving in the city's underbelly, was to ignore it. Trouble was a currency he couldn't afford. But then, a cough, small and ragged, cut through the drumming of the rain. It wasn't the guttural sound of a hardened street dweller. It was softer, uncertain. Against his better judgment, Leo squinted into the gloom. He could make out the silhouette of a young woman, her hair plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through. She was shivering violently, her arms wrapped around herself in a futile attempt to generate warmth. He could have walked away. He should have. He had his own 5-year-old daughter, Lily, waiting upstairs. She was his world, his sun and his moon, and protecting her meant avoiding any and all complications. This girl was a complication personified. But then she lifted her head, and in the flickering light from a passing car, he saw her eyes. They were wide and filled with a desperate, hunted look, but beneath the fear, there was a startling clarity, a depth that seemed entirely out of place in this derelict corner of the world. Can I help you?" Leo asked, his voice hoarse. The girl flinched, pulling herself tighter. "No, I'm fine." Her voice was a whisper, but it was cultured, refined, another puzzle piece that didn't fit. "You're not fine," Leo stated. "A simple fact. You're freezing. You'll catch your death out here." "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted, the dam of her composure cracking. Leo let out a long, weary sigh that seemed to carry the weight of his entire life. He thought of Lily, warm in her bed. He thought of the single can of soup in his bag. He thought of the countless times life had kicked him when he was down. And then he thought of the simple, unwavering rule he tried to live by, the one he wanted to teach his daughter. You don't turn your back on someone who needs help if you have the power to give it. "Look," he said, making a decision that his logical mind screamed was a mistake. "I don't have much. In fact, I have next to nothing. But I have a roof, and it's dry. You can stay for one night, just to get out of the storm." The girl's wide eyes searched his, looking for a catch, a threat. She found none. She saw only the tired lines etched around his own gaze, the genuine concern that softened his worn features. Slowly, she gave a single, shaky nod. "My name is Leo," he said, opening the door. "And my daughter, Lily, is asleep upstairs. We'll have to be quiet." "Elara," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "My name is Elara." As she stepped out of the shadows and into the dim, flickering light of the apartment hallway, Leo felt a profound sense of unease. He had just invited a complete stranger, a ghost from the storm, into his home, into his daughter's life. He had no way of knowing that this single, impulsive act of kindness was about to unravel his entire world. unaware that the shivering, penniless girl before him was the daughter of one of the richest, most reclusive men in the country. The twist in his life story had just walked through the door. The apartment was a testament to a life lived on the brink. It was tiny, comprising a single room that served as a living area, kitchen, and, for Leo, a bedroom. A faded floral curtain separated a small alcove where Lily's bed was tucked away, her own little kingdom in their cramped world. Yet what the apartment lacked in space and possessions, Leo filled with love and meticulous care. Everything was spotless. A string of Lily's colorful drawings was taped to the wall, a vibrant splash against the peeling paint. A small pot with a surprisingly resilient-looking herb sat on the windowsill. Elara took it all in, her shivering slowly subsiding in the dry air. She had seen rooms larger than this entire apartment used solely for storing shoes. The contrast between this space and her own life was so stark it was physically dizzying. "You can take the couch," Leo said, gesturing to the worn, lumpy sofa that doubled as his bed. He pulled a dry, clean blanket from a chest at its foot. "It's not much, but it's better than the street." Then he turned to his meager groceries. "Are you hungry? I was about to make some soup." "I don't want to impose," Elara said, her eyes fixed on the single can. She knew it was likely his and his daughter's dinner for the night. Leo just smiled, a faint, tired expression that reached his eyes. "There's always enough to share. That's what my mother used to say." He worked with an economy of motion that spoke of long practice, heating the soup and adding a splash of the precious milk to make it creamier, just how Lily liked it. He sliced the bread and toasted it on a pan. The simple meal filled the small room with a warm, comforting aroma. As he worked, Elara sat silently on the couch, wrapped in the blanket, watching him. She watched the gentle way he moved, the quiet dignity in his posture. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry at the world for his lot in life. He was just getting on with it. "Daddy!" A small voice piped up from behind the curtain. A moment later it was pushed aside, and a little girl with her father's kind eyes stood there, rubbing the sleep from her face. She clutched a well-loved, one-eyed teddy bear. Leo's entire demeanor shifted. The weariness fell away, replaced by a radiant, all-encompassing love. "Hey, my little lightning bug, I thought you were asleep." "I heard noises," Lily said, her gaze falling on Elara. She didn't look scared, only curious. "Lily, this is Elara. She was caught in the rain, so she's going to stay with us tonight to get warm." Lily patted over her bare feet, silent on the worn floorboards. She stopped in front of Elara and simply stared. Elara felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Children were honest. They could see things adults missed. What would she see? "You're very wet," Lily declared finally. Then she held up her teddy bear. "Barnaby says you can give him a hug if you're sad. He gives the best hugs." A genuine, startlingly beautiful smile broke across Elara's face. It was the first time Leo had seen it, and it transformed her, chasing away the shadows. She gently took the offered bear and hugged it to her chest. "Thank you, Lily, and thank you, Barnaby. I think I needed that." The three of them shared the simple meal, sitting on the floor around the low coffee table. Lily, now wide awake, chattered away, telling Elara all about her day at the local community daycare, about the picture she drew of a purple giraffe, and about the loose tooth that she was sure would fall out any day now. Leo listened, interjecting with a laugh or a gentle question, his focus entirely on his daughter. Elara found herself captivated. This was a world away from the silent, formal dinners of her own childhood. In her father's mansion, dinner was a performance, a stilted affair in a cavernous dining hall where the clinking of silverware was the only sound. Love wasn't served alongside the 5-course meals. Here, in this tiny, rundown apartment, love was the main course. It was in the way Leo cut Lily's bread into little stars, the way his eyes crinkled when she giggled, the way she would lean her head against his arm, completely secure in his affection. Later, as Leo tucked Lily back into bed, Elara overheard their nightly ritual. "I love you to the moon and back, lightning bug." "I love you to the stars and back again, Daddy," Lily's sleepy voice replied. Tears pricked Elara's eyes. The simple, profound exchange hit her with the force of a physical blow. Her father, Arthur Sinclair, was a titan of industry, a man who could buy and sell entire companies with a single phone call. He had given her everything money could buy: a world-class education, luxury cars, a limitless credit card. But he had never, not once, told her that he loved her. He had shown his approval through gifts, his disappointment through silence. Affection was a transaction, a reward for meeting his impossibly high standards. She had run away 2 days ago after a particularly brutal argument. It was about her future, as it always was. He had laid out the plan for her life as if it were a corporate merger. The prestigious MBA program she would attend, the executive she would marry to consolidate a business alliance, the seat on the board she would eventually occupy. She was not a daughter, she was a legacy, an asset. When she had tried to voice her own dreams, to work with her hands, perhaps in conservation or art restoration, something real, something tangible, he had dismissed them as childish fantasies. "You are a Sinclair," he had thundered, his voice echoing in the marble hall. "You will act like one." So she had run. She had packed a small bag with cash, left her phone and credit cards behind so she couldn't be traced, and simply walked out the gilded gates. She wanted to know what it felt like to be anonymous, to be just a person, not a name. But the city was a harsh and unforgiving place. Her cash had been stolen on the first day, and she had quickly learned that without money or connections, she was truly invisible. The storm had been the final, terrifying blow, reducing her to a shivering, hopeless creature in a doorway. Lying on the lumpy couch, listening to the rain finally soften to a gentle patter against the window, Elara felt a strange sense of peace settle over her for the first time in her life. She was destitute, with no plan, and no one in the world who knew where she was. Yet she felt more at home in this stranger's apartment than she ever had in her own father's mansion. She had been given something tonight that money could never buy: unconditional kindness. A simple bowl of soup and a dry blanket had been offered not as a transaction, but as a pure act of human decency. She realized with a startling jolt that poor single dad Leo Vance was richer in all the ways that truly mattered than her millionaire father would ever be. And she knew, with a certainty that resonated deep in her soul, that she could never go back to the life she had left behind, not without changing it first. The first rays of a watery dawn crept through the window, painting the room in shades of gray and soft gold. Elara was already awake. She folded the blanket with a precision she hadn't known she possessed and placed it neatly on the couch. For a long moment she simply stood, watching the gentle rise and fall of Leo's chest as he slept, his face in repose, looking younger, less burdened. She looked towards the curtained alcove where Lily slept, a small, peaceful lump under a patchwork quilt. A war raged within her. Part of her wanted to stay, to learn more about this simple, profound happiness, but she knew she couldn't. Her presence was a risk to them, a loose thread that could unravel their fragile peace. Her father's world was one of power and control. When he found her, and he would find her, she didn't want these good people caught in the crossfire. She was a problem, and they deserved none of it. She needed to leave, but she couldn't leave without a trace, without some acknowledgement of the sanctuary she'd been given. Rummaging through her soaked jacket, she found a pen and a crumpled receipt. On the back, she wrote a simple message. "Leo, thank you for the soup, the warmth, and the kindness. You and Lily have something truly special. Never lose it. I hope one day I can repay you. Elara." It felt inadequate. Words couldn't capture the shift that had occurred inside her. Then she remembered the one small personal item she had brought with her, something her father would never think to look for. It was a small, smooth river stone, polished to a dark, glossy sheen. It was worthless except for her. Her mother, who had passed away when Elara was a child, had given it to her. She'd told her it was a wishing stone, a small piece of the earth to hold on to when the world felt too big and cold. With a pang of sorrow, she placed the stone on top of the note on the coffee table. It was the most valuable thing she owned, and she wanted Leo to have it, a small piece of her heart left behind in this haven. Quietly, she let herself out of the apartment, the click of the latch sounding unnaturally loud in the morning stillness. She stepped out into a city washed clean by the storm, her path forward uncertain, but her purpose clear. When Leo woke, the first thing he noticed was the empty couch and the neatly folded blanket. His heart did a quick, nervous stutter. He checked on Lily, who was still sound asleep, and relief washed over him. Then he saw the note and the strange, dark stone on the table. He read the words, a small frown creasing his brow. Repay him? He hadn't done it for repayment. He had done it because it was the right thing to do. He picked up the stone. It was smooth and cool to the touch, feeling strangely significant in his palm. He shrugged, chalking the whole experience up to one of the city's many strange and fleeting encounters, and slipped the stone into his pocket. Weeks turned into months. Life fell back into its grueling rhythm. Leo worked double shifts in a warehouse, his body aching with a fatigue that seeped into his bones. The money was barely enough to cover rent and food. The landlord was raising the rent again next month, a constant low-grade terror that hummed beneath the surface of his days. He found himself touching the smooth stone in his pocket often, a subconscious habit. It was a small, solid reminder of that strange night, of the girl with the haunted eyes and the beautiful, rare smile. He wondered what had become of her. Then the crisis hit. It started with Lily feeling tired, more so than usual. Then came the fevers, sudden and spiking. A persistent cough rattled her small frame. The doctor at the local free clinic was kind, but his face was grim. After a series of tests, the diagnosis was delivered with a heavy, clinical blow. A rare and aggressive form of pneumonia. Lily needed specialized treatment, a long hospital stay, and expensive medications that were miles beyond Leo's financial universe. The world tilted on its axis. The humming terror of poverty became a roaring beast. Leo felt a helplessness so profound it was suffocating. He watched his bright, bubbly lightning bug become pale and listless, her laughter replaced by weak coughs. He sold what little he had of value. He begged the hospital for a payment plan, but the upfront costs were astronomical. He was drowning. One evening, after a heartbreaking day at the hospital, where Lily had been too weak to even speak, Leo returned to the empty, silent apartment. An eviction notice was taped to his door, a stark white flag of surrender. It was the final straw. He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands, and for the first time in years, he wept. He had failed. He had failed his daughter. He was a good man. He had worked hard. He had been kind. Why wasn't that enough? In his despair, his hand closed around the stone in his pocket. He pulled it out, staring at its dark, polished surface. It was just a rock, a useless, sentimental piece of stone. A bitter laugh escaped him. "I hope one day I can repay you," her note had said. A cruel joke. Suddenly, a sharp, authoritative knock echoed on the door. Leo's heart seized. It was the landlord, or worse, someone from collections. He wiped his face, took a deep breath, and opened the door, ready for another confrontation. But it wasn't the landlord. Standing in the hallway was Elara. She was different. Gone were the soaked, ragged clothes, replaced by a simple but impeccably tailored dark coat. Her hair was styled, her face composed, but her eyes held the same intensity he remembered, now sharpened with a fierce determination. Behind her stood a tall, stern-looking man in a suit. "Leo," she said, her voice steady but laced with an urgency that made his skin prickle. "I came as soon as I heard. I'm so sorry." Leo stared at her, confused. "Heard? How did you—" "It's a long story," she said, stepping inside. "The short version is, I've been looking for you, for months." She gestured to the man behind her. "This is Thomas. He works for my father. He helped me find you." Her eyes scanned the room, landing on the eviction notice still clutched in Leo's hand. Her expression hardened. "We have to go. To the hospital, now." "I can't," Leo said. "They won't let me. The bills—" "That's all been taken care of," Elara said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Everything. The best doctors are flying in tonight. A private room is being prepared. Just get your coat. We'll explain on the way." Leo was too stunned to argue. The sheer force of her will propelled him out the door and into a sleek, black car that purred silently at the curb, a car that cost more than he had earned in his entire life. As they sped through the city, the man named Thomas driving with unnerving calm, Elara finally began to explain. And the twist came, not like a gentle turn in the road, but like a seismic shift that buckled the very foundations of his reality. "My full name," she said, her gaze unwavering, "is Elara Sinclair. My father is Arthur Sinclair." The name hit Leo like a punch to the gut. Arthur Sinclair, the reclusive tech billionaire, a phantom who owned half the city but was never seen, a name synonymous with unimaginable wealth and power. Leo had packed boxes with Sinclair logos on them at the warehouse. "I ran away," she continued, her voice dropping. "I needed to see what the world was like outside the bubble he built for me. I was lost and scared, and you took me in, you and Lily. You showed me what family and kindness really were. You had nothing, but you offered me everything you had." She looked down at her hands. "When I left, I went back, not to stay, but to confront him. To tell him I wanted a real life, not the one he had designed for me. It was a battle. He cut me off, thinking he could force me to comply. But I had a plan. The stone I left you, it wasn't just a rock." She explained that her mother had owned a small, independent art restoration studio before she married her father. It was her passion. After her death, Arthur Sinclair had absorbed it into his massive conglomerate, preserving it in her memory but burying it under layers of corporate structure. The stone was not just a memento, it was an unofficial key, a symbol her mother had used. Elara had used her knowledge of that forgotten little studio, leveraging her inheritance from her mother, to start building something of her own, separate from her father. It was slow, difficult work. "I've been trying to find you ever since," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I hired private investigators with the little money I had, but without a last name it was impossible. Then Thomas found me. My father had been searching for me too. He was worried in his own way. When I told him about you, about Lily, something changed." They arrived at the hospital and were whisked through a private entrance to a pristine, quiet wing. In a large, comfortable room, Lily was sleeping peacefully, hooked up to machines that hummed a quiet rhythm of life. A team of nurses bustled about. A tall, imposing figure stood by the window, his back to them. He turned, and Leo found himself looking into the face of Arthur Sinclair. He was older, with a severe face and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He looked from his daughter to Leo, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice a low rumble, "my daughter has told me a great deal about you. She tells me you are a man of principle, that you offered her shelter when she had nothing, expecting nothing in return." Leo, still reeling, could only nod. "For that," Sinclair said, a flicker of something human in his cold eyes, "I have your gratitude. The expenses for your daughter's care are covered, completely. She will have the best treatment money can buy." Later, after the doctors had assured Leo that Lily's prognosis was now excellent, Elara found him sitting by Lily's bedside, just watching her breathe. "This is too much," Leo whispered, overwhelmed. "I can never repay you." Elara sat beside him. "You already did, Leo. That night, you saved me. Not from the rain, but from becoming my father, a person with everything and nothing. You reminded me what is real. That is a debt I can never truly repay." The resolution wasn't just financial. Arthur Sinclair, moved by his daughter's story and her fierce new independence, began to change. He started to see the world not just as a balance sheet, but through the lens of human connection his daughter had shown him. He didn't just pay Lily's bills, he established a charitable foundation to fund the hospital's pediatric wing, ensuring no other parent would face what Leo had. And for Leo, it wasn't a handout. Elara, using her newfound leverage and her father's backing, reopened her mother's art restoration studio. Knowing Leo was a skilled and meticulous worker from watching him in his own home, she offered him a job, not in a warehouse, but as a workshop manager, training him in the craft. It was a position of dignity, of skill, of purpose. Months later, on a bright Sunday afternoon, the three of them, Leo, a healthy and vibrant Lily, and Elara, walked through a park laughing. Lily, holding Elara's hand on one side and her father's on the other, was a bridge between two worlds. Elara was no longer a Sinclair in hiding or a corporate asset. She was just Elara, a woman who had found her own strength. Leo was no longer just a poor single dad struggling to survive. He was a respected manager, a loving father whose future was bright. They had become an unlikely family, forged in a storm and bound by a simple act of kindness. The night a poor single dad let a strange girl stay for one night had ended up being the night they had all been saved. True wealth, they had all learned, wasn't measured in dollars, but in the quiet, unshakable love that could be found in a shared bowl of soup, in a child's sleepy whisper, and in the courage to open your door to a stranger in the storm.
Thank you for joining us for another deeply moving story. If this tale touched your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting and inspiring narratives. Your support helps us continue to share these powerful stories with the world. We can't wait to see you in the next one.